Border podcast, an inside look at California politics in the state legislature. I am your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover. And, it's funny, at 10:30 today, I got a call. We were actually supposed to have a very special guest on today, and we still do, by the way, but I'll get to it in a second. But we're going to have the first ever colleague from across the aisle today, Carlos Villalpudua. He's a Democrat that represents San Joaquin County, Assembly District 13 in the legislature, and unfortunately called about 30 minutes ago and said he couldn't make it on this week. So we will work to get him rescheduled, but we were kind of scrambling, and our whole team is busy today. And so I'm really excited to have Ian Mayer on. Ian is our intern on Team Hoover in the Assembly Capitol office. And Ian, how's it going today?
Good, yeah. I was just answering the phones, and you saved me from that. So
yeah, I literally was like, Ian, you want to be on a podcast? Let's go do it.
Yeah, no. I know I was a little nervous because this is my first one, but I'm excited to be on it.
Absolutely, no, we appreciate you being here, and honestly, I thought it would be a cool opportunity to just kind of briefly talk about, because our office really emphasizes internships, and we have a lot of you've met a lot of our interns in the Capitol. We've got a lot of college level interns in the state Capitol. We also have a huge high school internship program in our district office. And so we're always trying to give opportunities and experience to students. But wanted to just ask you, how has your experience been as an intern, and what have you learned so far?
Yeah, no, I just want to say first, thank you for the internship. And a lot of my friends, they have trouble finding internships, and this was a really great opportunity. But
for sure,
it's really opened my eyes to other job opportunities, because at first I considered only going to law school, but then I've met a fellow, she's a intern too, and it really opened my eyes to find other job opportunities that I could do, and it just gave me experience in the legislative office.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and you're getting kind of a front row seat, right, to the legislative process, which is certainly pretty eye-opening.
No, there's all the bills. I didn't realize how many bills, just thousands of bills every session.
Yeah, 2,100 this year. What have been some of your biggest the most interesting things you've seen? How long? It's been 3 months, maybe.
Yeah, 2 to 3 months. Yeah, I've been in.
Okay.
I would say the most interesting thing I've seen is how active constituents are in the whole process. Especially I'm on the phones a lot.
Yeah.
And every day we receive calls from constituents, and I think it's really awesome. Cool to see them involved in the process.
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, we have a very active district, which is great, and a lot of our constituents will call and give their opinion on legislation, or their opinion on, or even, call with questions or problems that they're having with a state agency, which we try to help them with. And so that's really, I always say it too, because it's, a lot of the focus of the legislature is always on the lawmaking process, but such an important role of a legislator or of an assembly office or a Senate office is also helping people navigate state agencies. To me, that is such a important part of the process too, that doesn't really get, people don't even know. You can call our office anytime if you live in our district, if you're having any problems with any state agency, whether it's DMV, whether it's EDD, whether it's, some licensing board, you can call our office, and we will get involved and help you. So I think it's a very undervalued and under talked about part of the job. So it's great. That's awesome. Well, hey, we have been really excited to have you. So you are at UC Davis, correct?
Yes.
So you're a junior?
Yeah, so currently undergrad studying political science and history.
Political science, okay.
At UC Davis,
nice.
Junior, yeah.
What made you want to pick political science? I was also a poli-sci major, by the way.
Well, for one, I didn't really like math. And so
that's a good reason.
Yeah, I quickly realized that. So then, but I really like law and stuff.
Yeah.
And I find the whole law process really interesting. So,
that's great.
Political science is perfect for that.
For sure. So, yeah. And history is really interesting too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. I was going to do poli-sci and economics when I was at UCLA, and And I was okay at math. Like it wasn't like my best subject, but I'm like, I can figure math out.
Yeah.
But then like you have to take calculus
Yeah.
and
No.
economics. And I think I tried it out at the community college level. And I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me.
No,
So
definitely. Yeah.
I'm like, I learned very quickly what my strengths and what my weaknesses were, right?
Yeah.
So, no, but that's awesome. So you're a junior, you've got like 1 year left. What do you want to do like after college?
Yeah, so I think right now the plan is to try to go to law school.
Cool.
I'm currently
Yeah.
studying for the LSAT, which
Nice.
is very, very tough test, but
Very tough.
yeah. And
That's great.
then, but as I was saying, like this internship like opened my eyes to other opportunities,
Yeah.
like the fellowship program, and I don't know I might consider that too. It's kind of like
That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and some of the fellows have done both, right? Like they've come and done the fellowship program after their undergrad and then gone to law school after that or vice versa, right? So,
yeah,
that option's definitely on the table too. So, well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I mean, I really do think that I always say like some people come here and they intern and they really love it and they're like, hey, I really want to, work in policy, which is kind of how I was because I started as an intern. You're through the UC Center program, right?
Yeah.
So we literally same program. Like
Yeah,
I started
exactly.
as a UC Center intern.
Yeah,
I got an internship in the state Senate and really kind of felt the same way you do, where I was like, this is really like interesting. It's something that I want to keep doing. And then we've had interns too, and I think this is important as well, that come and they intern and then they say, that was really interesting. I never want to do that again.
No, it's good to figure out like what you like and what you don't like.
Yeah. Well, and that's the great thing is it's still great experience for your resume, but at the end of the day, you learn like, is this something, that I want to do or not? And both of those things are good to learn. And that's why I think internships are just so incredibly important. So if you do, if anyone listening is interested in internship, please give our office a call. Our capital office is 916-319-2006. And, we'll answer any questions. Maybe Ian will even answer the phone, I mean,
hey, I have one more week. But
this is your last week. That's right.
Yeah.
So we've loved having you in the office and, so give Ian a call and we'll tell you about internships and how you can get hooked up with those. We also, again, have a really robust high school internship program in Folsom as well. I was actually just out at Del Campo High School. Where are you from, by the way?
So I'm originally from East Bay.
Oh, East Bay, okay.
Like Walnut Creek, Concord area.
Nice, yeah.
And then, but yeah, my family moved to Tennessee recently.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah. That's great. Well, and so that we've got, I was at Del Campo, which, you're not from the SAC area necessarily, but it's one of the high schools in my district. And, was talking to a big group of high school students over the last week and actually recruited a number of interns as well. So we're going to, it's always great to engage students. So, but yeah, speaking of which, I was going to ask our other guest this, but just as a just for fun question, but what was your first job? What was,
Okay, so my first job. So like I said, my family recently moved to Tennessee a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And over there, well, it's funny because one of my college friends that I met freshman year, one day he's like, yo, my family's moved to Tennessee. I was like, wait, me too. So then we were able to get a job at the same place at a timeshare.
That's cool.
And, it was just taking out trash and like doing the grunt work and stuff.
That's great.
It was a great way.
Make a little money.
No state income tax,
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
We made more money and stuff. Yeah,
that's great.
They make a little money, but yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah. Hey, you know what? I feel like you got to have that, right?
No,
like,
exactly.
You make a little money. But you do those jobs. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You get it. You figure it out. I think it's awesome.
No, I figured out like, I don't want to do this like for the rest of my life.
Yes, that is also a lesson that you learn pretty quickly. I think my first job, I might have mentioned it before, but I was at Target. So I was a cashier at Target, and I think I was 16. I started working in high school, and then for a while, I also just did like the cart attendant job at Target, which is just like basically collecting all the carts and bringing them back to the store. And honestly, some days I'm like, I miss that job because
it's like peaceful.
It's peaceful, right? It's like it's so much more peaceful. But it was. I think it's really important. I was actually talking to this student at the high school I was at last week, and he was expressing the frustration of how hard it is now as a high school student to get a paid
Mhm.
job,
Mhm.
even any job. He's submitted like 40 resumes to Taco Bell's, your Subways, your retail stores, and they're just it's harder as a high school student to find those jobs now, which is really tough because I remember
Yeah.
that was a huge part of my high school experience. So, but well, hey, let's get into it. I want to talk. You're going to be hanging out with us today. We don't
Mhm.
have a super long show today, but I did want to talk about a few things. The first one, and maybe I'll get your take on it too.
Yeah.
So we did a poll last week for daylight saving time. So we actually about 200 of you that listen voted. So I appreciate the voting. Let's see. Um, I'm just going to pull up the results of the poll. So the question was, and this was a bit controversial, but the question was, since federal law prohibits a state from adopting permanent daylight time, which is more light in the evening,
Mhm.
would you rather the California legislature adopt permanent standard time, which is more light in the morning, and that is also a bill that's on the table right now in the
Mhm.
legislature, or keep switching clocks twice per year, which would get you 8 months of daylight time, right, for the whole year, right? So you're on
Yeah.
standard time 4 months, and then you would be on daylight time 8 months. So the results, and again, Bill Saley was on the podcast last week, and he said this was a biased poll because we don't talk about permanent daylight time, but that is not an
Yeah.
option without congressional action. So we just threw these two options out there because they're what's actually on the table. 90% said permanent standard time. So that's pretty
Oh,
overwhelming. Now, to be
okay.
fair, I did send it to people a couple people on my team, like you
Yeah.
and some of the staff.
Yeah.
But for the most part, this was just kind of on Twitter somewhere, floating out there and on the podcast. So 90% said permanent standard time, 10% said keep switching the clocks. The other reason this might be a biased poll is because I asked it like the week after people had switched their
Yeah.
clocks and
No.
everyone was miserable.
No,
So
definitely.
looking back, I was like, man, that was a really bad time to ask that question because you
Uh-huh.
could have asked me like you could probably have asked a lot of people that question last week as they're recovering from the losing an
Mhm.
hour of sleep,
Yeah.
and they would be like, whatever, just get rid of this time change,
No,
right?
exactly.
So what do you think on it? What do you think about the time change?
Yeah, so, like, funny story, I didn't even know the time change was happening. So,
Okay.
I was hanging out with friends at, like, it was
Yeah.
probably, like, 1 in the morning, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Wait, it's like, we're gonna have the time change." I'm like, "Oh, shoot, it's, like, 3, I have to go to bed
Yep,
now."
yep.
So, like,
So you're sleeping in.
No, exactly. So, I prefer, like, standard time, honestly, like,
Yeah,
I don't really
yeah.
want the switching as much.
Yeah, I used to be on the side of like, I love daylight, right? I
Mhm.
love the daylight in the evenings, but I've really over the years, just because that has been such Congress, like you could ask different people in Congress if they care about that and they'll probably say yes, but it's just not a priority for Congress. So I just don't really see it changing.
Yeah.
And so I think at this point, you've got a couple states that are already on permanent standard time. I think it makes sense for California as well as maybe some of the other West Coast states to do this as a group and just kind of make the change. And I think people are going to adjust to it over time.
Mhm.
We'll see what actually happens in the legislature. Like I have no idea where the
Yeah.
legislature stands, but people will adjust to it over time. And I think I think the switch is just like it's kind of silly at this point. It's like why are we doing this? So
Mhm.
all
I
right. So
agree.
question for this week that we're gonna poll, and this is a bit of a more fun topic. And then in our next podcast, I actually have a question lined up that's a little more policy oriented. But we were driving over here today, and you
Mhm.
reminded me that March Madness
Oh,
brackets are
yeah.
out,
Yeah.
right? And so we're gonna pick our top four
Uh-huh.
on the final four on the podcast today, and our champion. So I don't know if I have put you've got stuff written down already.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
put in zero. I've put zero thought into this. Like, so I went to UCLA. UCLA lost in the tournament, in the
Mhm.
Pac-12 tournament. They've been extremely mediocre this
Yeah,
year. They're
yeah.
not going to the tournament, so I'm really checked out this year.
Uh-huh.
But who are your like? Who do you think is gonna like win this year? And who's your like final four? What do you think?
Okay, for Final Four, so for the East, I really like Iowa State.
Okay.
They're the 2 seed,
Iowa
and
State. Okay.
I don't know. They've been doing really good this year. I've been paying attention a good amount, and they beat Houston, I think.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they
Okay.
beat Houston in their Big 12 championship, so they won their conference. Um,
I think a lot of our listeners are like me, and I'm like, I haven't followed it
yeah,
closely enough this year. So I'm just like, cool. I believe you. Iowa
yeah,
State. I'm going to have to pick something different because we got to compete here. We got to have
uh-huh.
different ones. So I guess I'll go with, oh, man. This is tough. Like San Diego State's in the East. Like
Yeah, no, they're good.
didn't they make a run like in the last couple years? I feel
Yeah,
like
last year I think they were in the Final Four.
I'm gonna just be a California like sellout and
Uh-huh.
go San Diego State.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And then in the West, who you got in the West?
So I like the Pac-12 teams, so I'm gonna go Arizona.
I like Arizona too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always like,
I mean, I don't like Arizona, but I
but
do because I'll
yeah,
root for the
yeah.
Pac-12. You know,
No, I
so.
always root for the Pac-12 being like, it's the West Coast
All
Conference.
right, so you got Arizona. So I will say in the West, and I'm not gonna pick them because like they're a 12 seed, but
Mhm.
my wife is a lope. She's an antelope, Grand Canyon
Uh-huh.
University,
Oh,
and I
okay.
love these guys because they're not in a great conference,
Uh-huh.
but they're really good. I mean, when they get to the tournament, like they always, I mean, it's really hard, right? You're playing a totally different level of
Yeah, yeah.
competition, but I'm a big fan of the lopes, so I want to just give them a shout out. But I'm gonna take North Carolina in this one.
Uh-huh.
I'm guaranteed to be wrong because they're a 1 seed, and I feel like
No,
that's
yeah, they
gonna
always I
backfire
feel like
on
they
me.
lose,
They're
yeah.
gonna fall, but I'll take North Carolina in that. So what about the South? We got
South.
Houston
Gotta go
is the
Duke.
one. You got to go
Gotta
Duke,
go
man.
Duke.
Duke. All right.
I
My
love
son loves Duke. He
uh-huh.
wants to go to play at Duke so bad.
That'd be really cool.
I mean, I
That'd
don't
be
know.
crazy.
That's
That'd be
like
crazy though, yeah.
definitely.
It's a
But
great
he
great college
loves
though.
Duke. I think Duke is that's a great pick.
Yeah. Good
Houston,
opinion.
it's like they've been really good, right? Hasn't
Mhm.
Houston been like,
Yeah, they've been really good, but
I guess 30-4? They've lost a few
yeah.
times.
I just don't really trust them. Like
Yeah. I'm gonna take Marquette
mhm.
because, why not? I don't know anything about this. I'm just guessing at this point. I found
Mm.
that guessing in March Madness
Yeah, also,
oftentimes
yeah.
works out
No,
better.
it does because like I'll try to pick a bracket for real, and then it always just gets destroyed every
Yeah.
year. Like, there's no
It's
point.
hilarious. All right, and then the
Um,
Midwest. What are you thinking?
okay, Midwest. I want to say Kansas. Mix it up.
Kansas. Oh, you're taking Kansas. Okay,
Get
4
like a
seed
4
this
seed in
year.
there. Yeah,
Good program. All right.
yeah, really good program.
Gonzaga's a 5th seed. They've been like a 1 or 2
Yeah, no, they
lately.
have.
So interesting.
They kind of.
Oh
Uh,
man. All right. So then we got Texas in there.
mm,
Purdue's the 1. Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
Purdue. Last year they lost a 16 seed though.
That's right. Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
they
So they're
lost.
the 1 again.
They're the
Oh
one
my
again.
gosh.
Yeah,
All right, I'm just gonna
but
go Gonzaga because they somehow always find a way
that's a good pick. Yeah.
to make it. So I've got San Diego State, North Carolina, Marquette, Gonzaga. I'll take my winner. Oh man, just go North Carolina. That's such a dumb pick, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for it.
I got Duke.
You got
I got
Duke
Duke.
winning it all. All right,
Yeah.
so there you go. I
Listen.
mean, have fun with your March Madness brackets this week. I think they start Thursday this week after the play-in games, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thursday.
so I always love March Madness. My son loves to watch, all the basketball,
hmm
and I hear that like it's one of the biggest times of the year where people take time off. Like,
Really?
yeah, you
Yeah.
call into work, you're like, hey, I'm
It was-
sick, or
Yeah, I'm not feeling well.
I got to go on
Yeah.
vacation for a few days because those first few days are just super fun, right?
No,
It's a lot
they're
of
really fun games. Yeah, and then every year I'm in club volleyball at UC Davis,
Oh, okay.
and we're gonna do like a March Madness bracket challenge this year.
Nice. That's
See who
great.
has the best bracket. kind
Love
of
it.
thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, you know
Mhm.
what? I hope for the best with Duke, and we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
I don't know. Yeah.
So yeah, good luck with everybody's brackets. I hope everybody, does well if you're doing one in the office or whatever. We're gonna jump into our stories of the week. Just a few I highlighted this week. I thought this first one was so interesting, and I think everyone's kind of reaction is similar to mine. But there was a new committee in the legislature last week that held its first hearing on how to make residents happier. So this is
Mm.
the Select Committee on Happiness is what it is called. It is The former speaker,
Interesting.
Anthony Rendon, is put this together.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I, so it's a select committee on, I guess I'll tell you the full committee name. It's the Select Committee on Happiness and Public Policy Outcomes. Um, and I was going to read this. This filmmaker was testified in the hearing, and said he had visited 14 countries. The keys to happiness are nurturing strong interpersonal and communal relationships, leading a life that includes meaning, play, or novelty, and a sense of gratitude. Some of the other experts in the hearing mentioned economic stability being a key, not necessarily economic wealth, but economic stability,
Mhm.
a connection to the environment, and resilience. And so I think, and then there was some polling. So, and then I'll get your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So the Public Policy Institute of California also did a survey which found that 58% of California adults said they were pretty happy, 16% very happy, 26 not too happy. So about 3/4 of the state's decently happy. But that number of not too happy continues to grow, which I will make an editorial comment here. In California, I
Mhm.
think it's a beautiful state, amazing state, but sometimes I think there's a lot of frustrations that could lead to a little less
Uh-huh.
happiness. But I mean, this one's easy to make fun of a little bit, but there's also on some level where I'm like, do we need a committee on happiness? Probably not. But some of the experts that testified, I think it is kind of interesting. So, but yeah, what are your thoughts on the happiness committee?
Yeah, no, I mean, like you were saying, I don't know if we need a committee on happiness. There's a lot of committees out there. Like looking at all the bills, they always want to create another committee, which is very
It's
interesting.
true. Yeah. I
But
know, like, it might be more happiness if we had fewer committees
yeah,
and
no.
fewer bills. I think a lot of Californians are like, when it comes to government, they're like, hey, maybe just let me live my life and
Mhm.
run my business and, go to my church and visit my friends and maybe not be so involved
Yeah,
in my
no.
day to day, right?
I'm interested to see like how this would like turn into government policy, like what they hear from the committee. I don't know.
That's actually a great question, right? Because so this is a select committee,
Uh-huh.
and for the listeners that don't know, select committees don't vote on anything, right? They literally exist to just talk about different
Yeah.
topics. So, for example, I'm on the select committee for serving students with disabilities, and
Mhm.
so we'll convene panels of experts to talk about how California is doing when it comes to supporting students with special needs and how we could do better.
Mhm.
And so I think there is a role for select committees to play
Yeah.
in just convening, people to experts, right, to talk about important topics, right? We've also notoriously seen, a million select committees created that do absolutely
Mhm.
nothing, right?
Yeah.
They basically get creative to, kind of get a headline, and then they just kind of sit there, right? And so I think it depends on your perspective. To me, this committee on happiness, I don't know what sort of policies will actually come from it.
Yeah.
I will say though, in terms of what was testified on, this last one really stuck with me, and it was resilience, and like this just concept of resilience and the importance it is to your ultimate or lifelong happiness, or maybe just
Yeah.
lifelong outcomes, right? It's just this idea that when you get knocked down, you get back up, right? And how I think, and maybe you can weigh in on this, but I think for a lot of younger people, we're just a little less resilient. Like there've been a lot of changing trends over the years
Mhm.
with like whether it's the helicopter parent trend or the
Yeah, yeah.
the cell phones or whatever you want to blame it on, right?
Uh-huh.
But there's been a number of changes over the years where we've become a little bit less resilient in terms of how we raise our kids. And so I'm trying to instill that in my kids where I'm like, any opportunity that I have to instill independence in them,
Uh-huh.
like, so even from a younger age, I think I even mentioned this last week, but it was like walking to school on your own,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, walk to school on your own. Like, run into problems, not like serious problems,
Mhm.
but small problems. figure out how to resolve them on your own, figure out how to work through those, and that will create, I think a more resilient like future for you, right? And so like that's some of the stuff that I talk about. I'm actually sending my son. He's 15. He's going to be flying by himself for the first time this week.
Oh, okay.
And
Interesting, yeah.
it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, no, that's
We have someone on the other side that's picking him up that we know and trust,
Uh-huh.
but like there's going to be that period, right,
No,
in between
yeah,
where
yeah.
he's going to be by himself, and he's nervous, but he's also like, I want to learn these lessons. Like I want to I want to figure this out and like see how it goes, because he really wants to visit friends in Texas. Like you mentioned, your family moved to Tennessee.
Yeah.
He's had some friends move to Texas
Uh-huh.
and other places. And he's like, I really want to go visit them. But like, we're like, well, we're not going out there all the time,
Yeah, I know.
And so this is like a test run for him to kind of see if he can fly alone. So it'll be interesting. But anyway, what do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess when I was younger, my parents, like, let's say I just like messed up my homework or like,
Yeah.
missed the assignment. They like, they wouldn't bail me out. It was like my job to like
Yeah,
figure it out, which I think is good for like growing as a, as a person and
for
stuff.
sure.
Especially like in college, like as a college student. Like now I'm starting to like, I've been
Yeah.
living by myself without my parents for like the last couple of years, and like
How's that going?
I don't know, it's very it's fun.
I'm sure it's like hit or miss, right?
No,
it's like
yeah,
there's
it's
pros
like-
and cons.
There's pros and cons for
Yeah.
sure. It's very cool that like,
Yeah.
more interdependence and like
Oh yeah.
like being able to like live by myself and stuff.
That's
But,
cool. Do you have roommates or?
Yeah,
is it
so I have like
yeah.
4 roommates, which is like it's very cool. Like
That is
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I remember when I moved into my first place, like outside of the house. I think I was in community college or something, and we had 3 guys in a 1-bedroom apartment. It was hilarious. It was such a
Yeah.
terrible. I mean, at the time, right? We had no money, right?
Yeah,
So we
no,
were just
exactly,
like,
yeah.
hey, if we all like chip in a couple $100, we can get this place.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, of course, you're not going to live your whole life that way, but it teaches you a lot of things. You get, we had to figure out how to feed ourselves. We had to figure out like that you can't eat pizza every night, right? Like,
No,
so,
yeah.
and you
Gotta
kind of
cook
got to
yourself.
become self-sufficient. So I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, no, there's some other interesting things in the hearing, but I think, I have my doubts that this is going to turn into actual policy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's the best use of our time as a state legislature. But I do think there is something to be said about the keys to happiness, and this idea of having communal relationships, interpersonal relationship, I think is really important for people too. So
Yeah. I think my takeaway is just like I'm interested to see how it could turn into like government policy.
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know if it does.
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll see. I mean, if it does, we'll report back on it.
Yeah.
All right. So next story. So, we've talked on the last few weeks about Proposition 1. It's this proposition that was on the ballot in the March primary to pass a mental health bond and fund a number of programs dealing with homelessness and mental health. Something I've expressed a lot of concerns about over the years, over the last few months. But interestingly enough, I think the support coalition for it was very big. I mean, you had business groups supporting it. You had a number of legislators, actually bipartisan coalition of legislators supporting it. The governor made it his number 1 priority. It had a lot of dollars behind it. The opposition coalition was the opposite. It was basically like very few people in the opposition coalition, very little dollars, very few dollars behind the opposition campaign. And currently, and I'm going to click on this so that I can get we're recording this on a Monday. So this is Monday at 11:30 a.m. and it is currently sitting at passing by 50.1%
Wow.
to 49.9% of the votes.
That's crazy. Yeah.
It really is. So like just looking at it's about a 20,000 vote difference, almost exactly. Sitting here today on a Monday. So it's still too close to call. In fact, nobody has actually called this race yet. The governor actually went into overdrive last week and announced a campaign to cure ballots. So for people that aren't familiar with what that means, essentially, whenever you have an election, there are a certain percentage of ballots that get rejected because, for example, maybe there's incomplete information, like you
Mhm.
didn't write the right name on the front, or maybe your signature didn't match the signature that they have on file. And so those ballots will get rejected. Well, you have a certain amount of time to correct your ballot and still get it counted. But the problem is, while the elections offices will communicate that your ballot wasn't counted, sometimes people don't really realize it. And
Yeah.
so, in really close races, what groups will do, whether it's candidates or whether it's proposition campaigns, is they will go out and track down the people that their ballots got rejected, tell them that they got rejected, and give them basically the paperwork that they need to correct their ballot and hopefully vote the way they want
Uh-huh.
them to vote, right? And so, both campaigns, the opposition and the support campaign, have announced they're going out and doing this right
Oh.
now. So this is such a close proposition. It's a statewide proposition that they are out there trying to actually cure ballots and give people, let people know that they need to fix their ballots. I think it's just fascinating, and like we don't need to talk a lot about it, but it's just
Yeah.
like it's really fascinating that something that really appeared to have a lot of support, even though there were people concerned about it, it was polling very well. The governor had made it a number one priority, and yet it's barely hanging on by this razor thin margin. We're was the election was on March 5th. We're sitting here on March 18th, and it's
Mhm.
it's it's too close to
Yeah, it's
call.
so
So
close.
it's really interesting. And so we're going to keep an eye on that one. There are rumors, and maybe they're not rumors anymore, but today we were supposed to hear from the governor. He was supposed to give the State of the State address to the legislature, which is something he does every year. And he canceled that today, um, in large part, at least from what I'm hearing, because he wanted to really talk about how awesome this was going to be. And it's
Uh-huh.
still too close to call. So he doesn't have that opportunity to do
Yeah.
that. So, yeah, I think he's got to be pretty frustrated. I do think it says something about where voters are at, where we are really tired of being asked to spend more money, more
Mhm.
taxpayer dollars, and get results that are terrible, right? Like we have spent so many taxpayer dollars to solve homelessness over the last 5 years. We've seen a 30+% increase in homelessness during that same period of time, and I think the voters are just tired of it. They're tired of dealing with it. So,
Yeah, I think my takeaway is it just shows, like, every vote counts, and, like,
yes, for
for even
sure.
for, like, something like in the state of California where there's, like, 30, 40 million people, I
Yep.
mean, this is, like,
It's
20
incredible, right?
20,000 votes away. It's crazy how close
Forty
it is.
million and 20,000. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like 20,000 is nothing. It's
Yeah, no,
it's amazing.
0.1%. Just shows every vote counts, you know?
Yeah, I've had a colleague on this podcast, Greg Wallace, who's assembly member in Palm Springs,
Mhm.
and he won his race by 85 votes out of like I can't
Wow.
remember, like 100 something thousand. I don't know
Uh-huh.
exactly off the top of my head, but um, yeah, you just gotta you seriously, every vote counts, and
Mhm.
so no, that's a great point. Um, Moving on, let's see. We've got this story out of Oakland, and every podcast I feel like we have a story about the Bay
Yeah.
Area. You said you're from the East Bay, so
Uh-huh,
maybe you can
yeah.
weigh in on this. But Taco Bell announced this. Actually, we'll put the article in the show notes too. But Taco Bell announced that they're going to be closing a number of their dining rooms in Oakland, so they're going to be moving to a drive-through only setup, right? And so there's the Taco Bell put out a statement that said, that providing a safe environment for team members and customers is the priority. That's what really motivated the decision behind this. And they're going to keep, evaluating the situation, but um, they are having to close dining rooms, hire security guards, and take extra measures to meet with law enforcement because crime has gotten so bad in Oakland. I just it's just another example of this, and we talk about them every week, but it's just really frustrating. So I feel bad for these businesses, and I feel bad for the
Mhm.
customers too.
Yeah, this reminds me of, like, the In-N-Out closing in Oakland, like, that was
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, that was crazy to hear
Yeah.
too.
So that's actually the article actually goes on to talk about that. So first of all, They've had robberies, frequent auto theft, and property damage at these Taco Bells. Um, this one's crazy. Taco Bell had been robbed 4 times in the past 4 months.
Wow.
The restaurant has plywood on the windows. Its most recent robbery 3 weeks ago, robbers rammed a pickup truck through the window to steal the safe.
Mhm.
They drove through the building. I mean, this is just so some of the locations started by going cashless, getting rid of the cash to discourage these robberies.
Uh-huh.
But this is like serious
Yeah, no,
lawlessness, right?
that's
This
like
isn't
serious
just
crime.
like
Yeah.
this isn't just like, stealing a Taco Bell order,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not talking about
It's like that's
um
like full scale. Like
it's crazy, right?
yeah.
So in 2 weeks, to your point, right, the only In-N-Out in Oakland is set to close, becoming the first time ever they've ever shut down a location.
Mhm.
A Denny's recently closed its only location in Oakland after more than 54 years, citing public safety concerns. Crime rates vary nationally, but crime continues to go up in Oakland. Robberies grew 38% last year. Burglaries grew 23%. Motor vehicle theft jumped 44%. And roughly 1 of every 30 Oakland residents had a car stolen last year,
Mhm.
according to the San Francisco Chronicle analysis. So, I mean, it's just, I think we're going to talk about this a lot in the legislature this year, but we have to do something about this crime wave. And Oakland's getting hit the hardest, and I think it is the result in large part of the policies that they've embraced and the fact that they're not enforcing laws in Oakland.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to go through the drive-through for your Taco Bell in Oakland.
That's crazy. Yeah, because like I'm
So,
from Concord, and like
yeah.
I know like one of the malls there, like a lot of the shops are closing down
Oh, I bet.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Like just a lot of the retail is just closing down or like
Yeah.
making alternatives, like doing alternative options. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough. They're in a really. Are you a Taco Bell fan? Or are you like
yeah,
do you
yeah.
enjoy Taco
I
Bell
like
from time
the
to time?
Crunchwrap Supreme. That's the
Crunchwrap
go-to.
Supreme's good.
That's the
What's
go-to.
great about the Crunchwrap Supreme too is you can kind of it's not super messy. Like you can kind of eat it on the go,
Uh-huh.
right? So you can't get like the Mexican pizza and like
Yeah,
it's
you can't-
always.
yeah.
I mean, I love the Mexican pizza, but it's like it's always really messy. So
Yeah, Crunchwrap Supreme's the Crunchwrap Supreme's the go-to, and then
yeah.
Doritos tacos too.
Oh yeah, Doritos taco. My kids
Yeah.
love those.
Yeah, those are good
they love
too,
those
yeah.
things. My wife actually a few years ago created like homemade Mexican pizzas. So she like
Mhm.
developed this recipe to do like
Oh, that's
basically
cool.
make them at home. They're actually
Uh-huh.
way better, but yeah, they're awesome. I still love the Mexican pizza.
Uh-huh.
But all right, last story. The California high-speed rail came out with its business report recently and said we need another $100 billion to finish the train from San Francisco to Los Angeles. This is in addition to the money that's already been spent. Just for context for the listeners, this was something that the voters passed, I believe, in 2008 that was promised at the time to cost $30 billion. It is now well over $100 billion. I think the project has currently $28 billion on hand. They think they're going to need another $100 billion when you're all said and
100
done.
billion. Wow.
You're with a B. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You're talking about, a 150 to $200 billion project. For something that I think there's a lot of questions. They've already reduced their ridership projections. They thought, originally they're like, well, we're going to have this many people riding this. And every time they come out with a report, that number goes down,
Mhm.
right? They don't know if people are even going to ride it. They're starting it in the Central Valley where,
Yeah.
really it doesn't go a lot of places, right?
Is this the one that ends in like Bakersfield?
Yeah. So it's like
Okay, yeah.
Bakersfield to, I want to say Madera. Which again, look, I'm from Fresno. I love the Central Valley. I've been to Madera. I've been to Bakersfield. A lot of wonderful people there. But the idea that, you're going to get ridership from Madera to Bakersfield, I think is pretty fanciful. Certainly not enough to fund any sort of
Yeah.
expansion of the project.
Yeah, this is just for like the initial like project, not even like an expansion or anything.
Well, yeah,
too.
this is from San Francisco to LA, right? So,
Uh-huh.
that, again, I think there was talk originally when this passed that maybe eventually someday it'll go to San Diego and maybe we'll get it to go to Sacramento. And I don't think any of that's ever going to happen. I don't even know if this project is ever going to happen. I wish there was more leadership on, shifting these resources elsewhere. I think ultimately maybe the voters are going to have to speak on that at some point. But I think if you ask most voters now, they would probably, change their mind on approving this now, knowing the real cost of it. Right. So we'll keep an eye on that story. That's our stories of the week. We are going to wrap up with our clip of the week. We've been talking a lot about the Paneragate scandal on this podcast. Ashley Zavala with KCRA3 has been doing some amazing reporting on this, initially reporting about this exemption that appeared to only impact a very few businesses to the fast food law. So last year, the legislature passed a fast food minimum wage increase, raising wages to $20 an hour. That was a bill that I opposed. I really believe that it is going to lead to a lot of cost increases for consumers and for businesses. And I think ultimately it's going to hurt workers too, because I think you're going to see fewer jobs available to workers. The bill passed last year with a carve out for companies that bake bread on the premises and sell it as a standalone item prior to September 15, 2023. That really appeared to only impact a very few businesses, including Panera Bread. Panera Bread CEO happens to be a large donor to Governor Newsom. And so Ashley Zavala reported on this story pretty early on. I think Bloomberg might have broke it. And then there was some great reporting locally as well. Then she broke the story on the NDAs, which is essentially that when they were negotiating this bill at the at the table, when they were the big negotiator, the big proponent of the bill was SEIU, one of the state's largest labor unions. They were at the table and asked everyone negotiating to sign NDAs, basically saying, we're not going to talk about how this bill was negotiated when we leave this room. She broke that story a couple weeks ago. And then this week, it's going to be our clip of the week, but she caught an SEIU representative and asked some questions about it. So let's play this.
Do you think our reporting is a nothing burger? Do you think our reporting is hype and innuendo?
Joseph, I don't think you've read that report in particular, and that statement wasn't from Joseph.
I have not read that report.
Okay. The use of non-disclosure agreements. I mean, did you know that those were used?
We were at a place where we met impasse in the legislative process, and we were asked by leaders at the state to say, "Hey, figure this out." And in these spaces, again, when you have entities that come from very different interests, ours, coming from the perspective of establishing, a voice for workers at the table, businesses coming from their perspective, in order to, have conversations, sometimes it does take, steps to be able to establish trust.
The legislation was put into print on September 11th. It passed September 14th, which was the final day of the legislative session when state lawmakers are sorting through hundreds of bills. I mean, is a 3-day fast-tracked process of good representation of the legislative process?
I would say this has been an extremely long process, and that was the last phase of the bill. Obviously, the bill went through many open hearings, many committee meetings. It was debate on the floor, both at the Assembly and the Senate. And there was a lot of community engagement. There was engagement from the industry. So, from where we started to get to the place to where we're at of September 14th, it really was a process of multiple years.
Were you a signee of an NDA in this?
I would prefer not to comment.
Okay. Could you tell us at least the terms of the NDA, what they covered, how long they were were set to be applied to any of this? Did they expire?
I would say the one thing, again, I feel like it takes away from, what we were able to accomplish.
So this this kind of started because I believe SEIU put out a statement, and Ashley Zavala came out and kind of said that they were pretty blindsided by this. But basically, a statement that her reporting on this issue of the use of NDAs and the problem with that is a nothing burger, is hype, and is innuendo. And so that's kind of what prompted this interview here. And so, I just think a couple of things. So one of my colleagues, Assemblymember Vince Fong, has put forward a piece of legislation that would ban this practice. I fully support that. I don't think that NDAs should be used in the legislative process.
Yeah.
Obviously this representative who supports the use of NDAs feels that they are a useful tool to establish trust. I'm sure that in some way that is true. But on the other hand, when you're, negotiating a bill that impacts the lives of business owners and impacts the lives of Californians, I think there needs to be full transparency. And speaking of transparency, I thought she had a great follow-up question, which was, is 3 days enough time to pass a bill? So it's interesting because about 10 years ago, before the voters passed a proposition that basically require a 3-day waiting period. So once a bill goes into print, you cannot vote on that bill and pass it until it has been in print for 3 days, 72 hours, right? And that was passed specifically to address this issue, which was back before that was passed, you would literally see a bill like this happen in a matter of hours. So you would see the amendments to the bill on the final day of the legislative session.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you're about to adjourn legislative session. You amend all of these changes into a bill. Not a single member of the public has a chance to react to it or give their opinion on it. And it just gets put in front of the legislators, and you're being asked to vote on it immediately within a matter of hours.
Mm-hmm.
This proposition was passed to stop that practice and at least give a minimum of 72 hours to allow the public the access to the changes that are being proposed. And I think some would argue that that's still not enough time. It is far better than no days and no hours. But I think that when you're talking about a bill of this magnitude, this idea that you're going to use the legislative process to basically give the public as little time as possible to look at it, I think is problematic. And then obviously you heard, the no comment, right, on whether NDAs were used or signed. So, I think this story is continuing to grow. I've greatly appreciated KCRA's work on it. And then there's been a number of other outlets covering it as well. And I'm hoping that we can have this discussion this year on eliminating the use of NDAs in the legislative process and allowing for more transparency. We're going to wrap there. Do you have any final thoughts, Ian, for the good of the order?
Just on the last story, I wanted to say, I agree with the transparency. And I feel like there should be as much transparency in government as possible, especially with the people voting and everything. So
Absolutely.
I just wanted to mention that.
No, I totally agree. And it's, I think it'll be an interesting conversation that we have this year. Just one announcement I wanted to make. So next week is legislative recess for spring break. I know we're not going to have a podcast recording next week, but we will be back on April 3rd will be the next podcast released. We have Senator Roger Nilo slated to be on that podcast. And he is actually the author of this daylight saving time bill. So we'll get to talk a little more about that. We'll come back with that on April 3rd. If you have any ideas or things you want us to be talking about on future shows, you can email pointoforderpod@gmail.com. You can watch, subscribe, follow our podcast on YouTube, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads @pointoforderpod. And then you can follow me on X or Twitter @Joshua_Hoover. I do occasionally give commentary throughout the week on some of the things going on. Ian, thanks for coming on today. I appreciate you saving us and giving me someone to bounce ideas off of
thanks
today
for having me.
and sharing about your internship. So thanks again, Ian, and best of luck to you.
Yeah, thank you.